Aloha. TEDxHonolulu will be taking over this time slot the next 3 weeks up until our event, July 9th. Each week, we'll be interviewing a speaker, our featured speaker, talking about their idea worth spreading. I'm your host, Quincy Solano, curator, event curator, and with me, I have my co-host, Ruby Menon, and she's the artist in resident curator for the event. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the mission of TEDx is, what we do is we actually produce events and programs that actually highlight dynamic speakers and individuals with diverse multicultural backgrounds within the community. So our vision is to be a local forum for ideas worth spreading and inspire people to strengthen themselves, build their community, and to engage with our global community. This year's event, speakers will share how they experience and intensify their encounters with flow and how they use flow to continually improve their physical, social, and mental performance in their professional and personal lives. So this year, the event will be held at the Neil Blaisdell Center, the Neil Blaisdell Concert Hall, July 9th, 2016 from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. We'll be showcasing 9+ speakers and performers. The day will be filled with awesome speakers that will cover science, architecture, art, and more. It'll also be a fun-filled interactive activities game to get you into your flow state. You get to make new friends, meet like-minded individuals, and share their love for the TED experience. And last but not least, we feed you delicious local organic food. And who doesn't love food, right?
Yeah,
Yay.
that's the biggest thing in Hawaii.
So I'm gonna actually point out where you can get tickets before we introduce our guests. For tickets, you can go to www.TEDxHonolulu.org/tickets, TICKETS. And with that, if you're watching this show, you can use Think Tech Hawaii to get $15 off your ticket. Right now, tickets are going at $80, so it'll be great. You can get your $15 off using Think Tech Hawaii. We'll also be present at the Eat the Street event tomorrow on Friday. And for that event, if you actually go in person, you can get $30 off. We'll also be at the Makers Fair, and you'll also get $30 off there as well. So.
Yeah, the Makers Fair is on Saturday at Iolani School. And so people can come by our table and then they can get their $30 discount.
Great. So I'm going to pass it off to Ruby, who will introduce our featured speaker of the day.
Great. Thank you, Quincy. So I'm very happy to be introducing our next guest. And Andrei Natarov is one of our featured speakers at the TEDx event. And Andrei is an assistant researcher with the International Pacific Research Center. He's part of the School of Ocean and Earth Science and Technology. Now that's a mouthful, so if you wanted the acronym, it's called SOEST, and he works out at the University of Hawaii in Manoa. His research has taken him all around the globe, and we'll have an opportunity to find out about some of his fantastic adventures that he's done in terms of his research. Andrei holds a PhD in physical oceanography and scientific computing from the University of Michigan. He studies waves, flow instabilities, turbulence, and mixing in the ocean. He has also participated in a number of research cruises, and he's gone to the Western Equatorial Pacific and Indian Ocean, aimed at finding signatures of various dynamical processes in the thermocline.
Very well done.
Welcome, Andrei.
Nice to be here, Ruby. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks so much for being our first guest. And I thought, it'd be kind of fun to get a sense of your background, how you got interested in science. Give us a little bit of history about
Well, it all started with the parents. My parents are not scientists, but they were engineers and were very interested in science at some point. So they got me involved in all kinds of fun activities, such as music, science, game playing, sports, etc. And another part was that they never tried to exert parental authority. They let me kind of free roam all these different occupations. And at some point, I mean, they try to encourage to study certain things in a way that is not intrusive. For example, they lied to me that science is going to make me rich, for example. So they lied to me sometimes, but not in a harmful way. So I kind of bought into that and got interested in science. And also I had a very good physics teacher later during my childhood, starting at the 8th grade, and so on. So she encouraged me to participate in science competitions, physics Olympiads, etc., and spent countless hours kind of coaching me on how to solve very difficult problems. So by the age of 15, I was hooked on science.
Wow.
Cool.
How awesome that you had a great mentor. And then now, where are you from originally?
I'm originally from Russia.
Okay.
I grew up in the Soviet Union. So that's
Awesome.
a short summary of where I'm from.
All right. And you know, science is such a huge field, so kind of curious as to what led you to oceanography as your field.
Right. So I mentioned that I was interested in physics primarily as a child. But physics usually deals with single bodies. You have forces acting on them, and you compute their trajectories where they go. And I was always mystified by fluid dynamics, where you have the same laws as physics, but you have a lot of bodies, tiny little parcels of fluid, which not only move under the influence of forces, they also try to push each other out of the way. And that's always like boggled my mind, and I was trying to understand how it's possible to solve it. So I had the interest in how people ever managed to get around this difficult problem of things trying to push each other around the place. So I had this mathematical interest in it. But oceanography obviously has something to do with fluid dynamics, and I grew up very far away from the ocean. So every visit close to the ocean was a very special event for me, and I wanted at some point to move very close to the ocean and study it. So
And here you are in Hawaii.
yes, so it worked out.
That's awesome. Now you're with the IPRC. Can you tell us what that stands for?
Sure. The IPRC is the acronym for the International Pacific Research Center, and it's a climate research institution at the University of Hawaii. SOEST that has 50 researchers, including faculty members, researchers like myself, and postdocs, which work on various aspects of climate research, including Asia-Pacific variability, how things change in terms of climate in the Asia-Pacific region, but also things such as monsoons, which are extremely important economically. Billions of lives are affected by monsoons, and if we can learn how to predict them better, then it's going to be a huge benefit to the society. But also, IPRC employs some of the best people in the world who are doing the monsoon research. Tropical cyclones is another topic. Paleoclimate, so seems a little bit distant from these things, but without paleoclimate studies, we wouldn't be able to place the current global warming in any historical context. How we wouldn't know that it's unprecedented over a very large span of time, or we wouldn't know if our models are doing all right, etc. So all these wonderful people at IPRC doing great research, and you should have them at the Think Tech Hawaii at some point. They will tell you a lot more of great things they're doing there.
And the paleoclimate is that actually sort of setting a baseline so that we understand the variations in terms of where things are varying to or differing?
That's one of the uses of paleoclimate studies, but as I will talk during my TEDx talk, I think science is really much wider. Any research topic is much wider than a single application that may come out of it. So it's a lot of different things.
Okay.
Yeah, and Ruby and I had the pleasure of actually getting to get a sneak peek of your actual presentation, and actually with the visuals, like, you know, it all kind of comes together. So even more so, it makes me excited to kind of see your full presentation, you know, once you kind of like go up there. I think, oh, okay. You have any other questions?
Oh, I could talk a little bit more about, I talked about other people doing research at IPRC. What I'm doing is studying the ocean dynamics close to the equator. It's very interesting because you have, for example, in the Pacific Ocean, you have very strong currents. We're not going to go into what drives them, etc. But also you have a pile of warm water, usually concentrated in the western equatorial Pacific, which causes a lot of these things that other people are studying, such as El Nino and things like this. And I'm studying how the amount of heat in that body of water is modified by interaction with what lies below that, beneath that. Because there are very strong currents which can exchange water, mix it, and affect the temperature of the surface water.
Wow. Now, one of the things that fascinated me about the work that you're doing is you get to go on these research cruises. And I'm thinking, you know, like an ocean liner cruise with the 6-course buffet and all of that, but how, I think
Some of it, I think, is like that, like research cruises, similar to pleasure cruises, I guess. But you also have to do a lot of work, usually. And work is a lot of fun if it's for a shorter period of time, but my cruises often involves months of work.
Really?
Yes.
So you're out at
And
sea for months?
Yes.
Wow.
Well, usually it's 1 month, but once I was on a cruise that lasted 70 days in the Indian Ocean, and that was a bit of a challenge, but it's always fun.
Yeah.
So what keeps you going during these events is the data that you collect, which is very interesting, and you spend a lot of time trying to understand it and interpret this.
So tell us a little bit about so maybe just give us a sense of what's the vessel like, and what are the accommodations like, and, you know, how do you live your day-to-day on this boat? And
well, the accommodations are simple but fine, perfectly suitable for a research scientist, and you don't spend too much time in your cabin. So usually the research ship has a laboratory where you spend most of your time. You have instruments to deploy and take care of. On the research cruises that I usually go to, you have to do the same kind of operation every 3 hours. And so it's a kind of becomes a routine. Yeah, so you do a lot of work, which much of it is routine, but.
And then how are they like large, like a large ocean vessel, or is it a smaller boat? And how many people?
Well, these are large research vessels.
Oh, okay.
So they're very stable, which is good because sometimes seas can get stormy and.
Well, thank you for sharing that information. I mean, it's very informative. Every time I hear you, I get excited for science and like doing science projects back in the day. So it's really exciting. We're going to be heading on to a quick break. This is TEDxHonolulu, and thank you for joining us.
Aloha! I'm Chantal Seville, host of the Savvy Chick Show on Think Tech Hawaii, and I'm going on tour. I'm taking you around the world. We're going to Canada, and then we're going to, we're in America, then we're going to San Francisco. So keep staying tuned, 11 a.m. every Wednesday on the Savvy Chick Show. We'll see you next time.
Aloha! How you doing? Welcome to Hibachi Talk. I'm here, Gordo the Tech Czar on Think Tech Hawaii, and I'm here with my good old buddy, Andrew the security guy.
Hey everybody, how you doing? Aloha.
Good
Thanks
to
for
have
watching.
good to have Andrew here in the house. Please join us every Friday from 1 to 1:30 and follow us up on YouTube. And remember, as we say at the end of every show, how you doing?
Hello, and I'm Patrick Bratton. Please join me for Global Connections every Thursday at 1 p.m., where we talk with a variety of guests about various international issues, historical issues, both here in Hawaii and abroad, range from security, human rights, ethics, and all sorts of other things. So please join me. I look forward to talking with you and seeing some of my guests.
Aloha! Join us at TEDx Honolulu 2016. It's at the Blaisdell, July 9th from 10 to 5. The discount code is RACHAEL_TEDxHNL. See you then.
And welcome back. My name is Quincy. I'm the host for today's TEDx Honolulu talk with Andrei Natarov and with Ruby here. And we were just talking a little bit about science. And, we have a few more questions, I think, that we want to ask our speaker.
So right before break, we were talking about your experience with the research cruises, and I think that's something we'd like to explore a little bit further. So can you tell us a little bit more in depth about, we talked a little bit about, the type of vessel you were on, and there's a lab, and sometimes you were out for, it sounds like a couple of months.
Right.
Maybe you can give us more of like an inside peek into what that experience is like.
The most important thing on the research cruise, first of all, is the instruments, of course, because that's what you're there for. If they're working, then things are going well. If they break, then it's not so good. But the second important thing is people. And you have different groups of people there. There are other fellow scientists, for example, who you're working or collaborating with or doing some other kind of research. But there's also crew members who are, very occupied during the day doing other operations, etc. And the ship captain and the officers, etc. So it's all different types of interactions with various people, and it's a good bonding experience to kind of become friends with different groups of people, etc. But going back to the instruments, the instruments that I've been using on research cruises are basically just two types. They measure velocity field, and they measure the mixing in the ocean, which, as I mentioned, determine how much heat flux there is between the surface waters and the deeper waters. So the instruments themselves are very interesting. You have to lower them into the ocean using a special crane. So one of them is attached to the so-called CTD frame. When you lower this into the ocean, it measures velocity as it gets lower and lower into the ocean.
So this is like really large type of equipment then, right? I mean, we're talking
The instrument itself is relatively small, so usually you bring it with yourself to the ship, and then it gets attached to the other equipment, and then you can use it. So it's not very large.
Oh, okay.
It's transportable. So
Now, you mentioned that you were with a bunch of other scientists.
on some cruises, sometimes you don't get a large company of scientists around you. Yes. But
So typically, what's the average number of other scientists that you get to
I've
collaborate
been on
with?
such various and diverse cruises in terms of number of scientists. For example, one very large project was in the Indian Ocean, Cindy Dynamo project, where there was tens of scientists from Japan and some from the United States, etc. But on some cruises, you just one or two scientists. And
Oh, that's all?
Yeah, that's all. So it depends what kind of research topic is being investigated.
And then when you're with a group of scientists that are from all over the world, how do you manage the language differences? Are there translators
Well,
on
most people
board,
do
or-
speak English.
Oh, they do speak
So-
English, okay.
Yes,
So that way
that's-
you can all
that's the-
communicate.
Right.
Oh,
yes.
okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
so that's the trick.
Wow, that sounds amazing. So maybe, is there anything else you want to tell us about your research cruise experiences?
Well, last year I went on a research cruise aboard a ship called Falkor, which is owned by Schmidt Ocean Institute.
Uh-huh.
And it's a somewhat different ship than the previous ones I've been aboard with, because it's a little more comfortable in terms of the accommodations, etc. So that's one thing I wanted to point out. And
Ah.
it's very good that we have
Good information.
people participating in oceanography, not just funded from the government, but also from.
So this was a private, privately funded?
Well, this institute is, yes.
Oh, it's privately funded.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So better accommodations then, yeah? You like
Somewhat,
those?
yes. They are important. So.
So maybe you could tell us a little bit about what you're working on, and also how some of the things that you're working on impact the environmental issues.
Well, I'm working on something which is seemingly distant from, it does relate to predicting El Nino better, possibly, but it's distant from that. I mean, there are a lot of intermediate steps, so I cannot just present you my direct research and say how relevant it is to society. And that's one problem in communicating science. It's very hard to sometimes relate some important research topics to the outcome. So my research project is dealing with these currents below the surface, etc., and how the mixing of waters occurs. But it's relevant to El Nino prediction, for example, or a monsoon prediction, a lot of other things, which are economically important.
Yeah. That's good for us, for Hawaii.
Yeah, societally important.
Yeah.
That's great.
So,
Yeah.
so that's basically the short summary of my research. I'll go in more detail regarding my research during the TEDx talk.
Oh,
Great.
great. Which actually leads us to our next question,
Right.
which is what inspired you to participate in the TEDx event?
Well, I mean, one thing that has puzzled me for a very long time is that science is a mind-blowingly successful enterprise, and yet its reputation is somewhat like it's kind of non-democratic. Like a few people do science, and the rest of us are consumers, and that's it. And I think it's just inaccurate and wrong. And a lot of people are blocked out from even reading about science seriously. They felt passionate about this to actually subject myself to all the vicissitudes of TED Talk preparation. So it's a risky topic, which is may or may not work, but I felt compelled to design and prepare a talk on this, and I'm glad that I was given the opportunity to present it.
Can you tell us a little bit about what your process has been like in terms of trying to get to the meat of your talk and how you're going to present it?
Well, I had the idea for myself very clearly from the beginning, but as I was trying to develop it, I found out it's pretty hard to communicate it, to let people know what I know regarding how science is supposed to work, etc. And it's not just about communicating it to other non-scientists. Even between scientists, there's a different vision of what science is all about. So that's also has been a challenge for me. So the first part was very easy and inspiring. Then there was a lot of hard work to design it. So hopefully right now it's in a shape which is understandable by most. And also there's always a trade-off how wide audience you want to reach and how many important details you have to skip. And I think achieving this balance was very challenging and difficult, but that's what kept me occupied as well.
That's super cool.
And so what would you say people can look forward to in terms of your TED Talk?
One thing to look forward to is that there's not going to be any dumbing down of science. It's going to be hard talk, very hard to understand, so it will require focus on the part of the audience. But I will go into achieving this focus a little bit more, and that's why it's perfect for a conference on flow. Flow is a very interesting state, which is hard to achieve for people, but that's what creative people are trying to achieve when they try to do something good. So even though the talk is challenging, I will try to facilitate the transition of the audience into the state in which they can understand most of what I'm going to talk about.
So maybe you can tell us a little bit about the state of flow for you. Like what is that like for you? How do you get into it, or what are the circumstances for you getting into that state?
I don't get there very often. I mean, by definition, it's hard to achieve for mere mortals. But on your way, you do enter the state of control. If you look at the flow diagram, which everybody should be familiar with, the way to the flow does lie through the land of control, where you're not quite in the flow, but at least you're in control and you're solving problems for which you have adequate skills, more or less. And that by itself has occasional, transitions into a flow state for a while, which by itself is very rewarding. And that's what I also want to communicate, that it's good to be in the state of control. Don't expect to be in the flow all the time, but it will happen once in a while. Whether you're doing science or just listening to science. So,
and that's what I think is amazing about flow is it's just a state of mind. So it's like scientists can be in it, artists can be in it. There's even athletes can be in flow, and this topic I feel resonates really greatly for this TEDx event because you really are able to relate to it in all facets of your industries, and so I think that's great.
Yeah, and that's really what we're trying to achieve also with this TEDx conference is we've got people in architecture. You've been seeing some beautiful artwork that's been being presented on the screen, and that is from our artist in residence, who is Solomon Enos. And if you haven't recognized his signature, or maybe you did, Solomon has done some amazing artwork. What he did is he designed a specific piece of art for each of the speakers based on what they were going to be discussing and also a little bit about their essence, and he tried to capture that in the artwork that he presented. So once you attend the event, you'll get a chance to see this beautiful artwork. It'll be part of the installation, and we'll also have interactive activities that will get you into the flow, and part of that is also working on this particular piece that Solomon has designed just for our TEDx conference. So,
and I think that's what's great. There's actually a lot of customized, like only pertaining to this event, like the art. A lot of the speakers that you may not have seen in the regular public circuit, you're able to kind of experience these events and like our mission states, right? Events and projects that actually create like these experiences that only you can experience at a TEDxHonolulu event, and that's why we're really excited. Just to remind everyone. So the event is July 9th. It's going to be at the Blaisdell Concert Hall. It's going to be from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. And then, of course, food is provided, which is great. Right?
Yes, we feed you.
We talked about the delicious organic food that they provide. And then you can pick up your tickets at TEDxHonolulu.org/tickets. And actually, Think Tech Hawaii actually has a really great discount code for $15 off. Just enter in Think Tech Hawaii as your coupon code, and you'll get $15 off. We'll also be at Eat the Street tomorrow, Friday night, where you get a one-time $30 discount
Yes.
at the event live, and then also at the Makers Fair at Iolani on Saturday. So lots of great opportunities. You know, we have less than 2 weeks left, and we're all excited. We have a lot of energy. All our speakers are pumped, and we'll be here for the next 3 weeks at this time slot, so you can check out the other speakers for TEDx Honolulu. And thank you, Ruby, and thank you, Andrei, for
Thank you, Andrei.
having us here
Thank you.
on Think Tech Hawaii.